I stared into the mirror, my hand trembling as it reached up to touch the bare skin of my scalp. Smooth and cold, like a river stone worn by years of gentle current. It was Ganal of it. My silver-streaked hair, the one thing I'd clung to as a quiet rebellion against time, shaved clean away in the night. And there, taped to the glass, a note in Tara's looping script. Time to let go of that fading beauty, Marianne. Today's about new beginnings. My breath caught in my throat, a sharp ache blooming in my chest. As the first light of dawn filtered through the lace curtains of my Savannah bedroom. It was my son's wedding day, and I felt like I'd been stripped bare. Not just of my hair, but of something deeper. Something I couldn't yet name. The shock hit me in waves, pulling me under like the humid air after a Georgia thunderstorm. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the quilt my late mother had sewn, pressing familiar patterns into my palms. How had this happened? I remembered going to bed early the night before, exhausted from arranging the floral arches for the ceremony magnolias and gardenias, their petals soft as whispers. Tara had stopped by with a cup of chamomile tea, insisting I rest. "You've done so much for us, Marianne," she'd said, her voice honey-sweet, eyes gleaming in that way I'd always mistaken for affection. Had she slipped something into it? The thought slithered in, unwelcome, but I pushed it aside. No, not Tara. She was family now, or would be in a few hours. I forced myself to stand, wrapping a silk scarf around my head, the one with the faint rose print that my husband, God rest his soul, had given me on our 20th anniversary. The mirror reflected a stranger back at me, eyes wide with disbelief, but I couldn't let this unravel the day. My son Jacob was marrying the woman he loved. I'd raised him in this old Victorian house on the edge of Forsyth Park, where the Spanish moss draped like old lace from the oaks. Today was supposed to be joy, not this hollow dread settling in my bones. I splashed water on my face, the cool droplets tracing paths down my cheeks, mingling with tears I hadn't realized were falling. "Pull yourself together, Marianne," I whispered to my reflection. "It's just hair. It grows back." But deep down, I knew it wasn't just that. It felt like a message. A cruel punctuation to the subtle shifts I'd noticed in Tara over the months, as I dressed in my simple lavender gown. The fabric whispering against my skin, memories flooded in, grounding me in the life I'd built before this morning's violation. My floral shop, Blossoms by the Bay, had been my haven for 30 years, tucked into a historic brick building downtown, where the scent of fresh-cut stems mingled with the salty breeze from the river. I'd inherited it from my parents, poured my heart into it after losing my husband to a sudden heart attack 10 years ago. Jacob had grown up there, playing among the buckets of roses and lilies, his laughter echoing off the tin ceiling. He'd gone off to college in Atlanta, met Tara at some corporate event. She was a real estate agent, sharp and ambitious, with a smile that could light up a room or, as I'd come to suspect, hide sharper edges. Our relationship had started warm enough. When Jacob brought her home 3 years ago, I welcomed her with open arms, sharing family recipes over Sunday dinners in my sunlit kitchen. The smell of pecan pie baking, the clink of forks on plates, Jacob's easy grin as he watched us chat. Tip felt like the family expanding, not fracturing. Tara even helped in the shop sometimes, arranging bouquets with a flair I admired. "You're like the mother I never had," she'd say, hugging me tight. Her perfume a mix of jasmine and something synthetic. But lately, there were cracks. Little things. Her suggestions that I modernize the shop, turn it into something more profitable. Jacob, nodding along, his eyes avoiding mine. I'd brush it off, attributing it to wedding stress. After all, planning a grand affair at the historic mansion venue overlooking the squares had been no small task. I'd handled the flowers myself, weaving in hydrangeas from my own garden, their blue hues matching the savannah sky. That morning, as I drove to the venue, the scarf tied securely, I replayed the note in my mind. Fading beauty. It stung, not because I was vain at 62. I'd earned my lines and graze, but because it felt personal, aimed at the core of who I was. The streets of Savannah, blurred by the wrought-iron balconies and blooming azaleas, a familiar comfort. I parked and stepped out, the humid air wrapping around me like an old friend. The wedding party was already buzzing inside the grand hall, with its chandeliers casting warm light on polished floors. Jacob spotted me first, his face lighting up. "Mom, you look beautiful," he said, pulling me into a hug. His cologne was the same he'd worn since high school, a steady anchor. But as he pulled back, his eyes flickered to the scarf, a question unspoken. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile, my voice steady despite the tremor inside. "Of course, darling. Just a little headache. Nothing a wedding can't cure." Tara appeared, then, radiant in her lace gown, veil trailing like mist. She air-kissed my cheeks, her hands cool on my arms. "Marianne, you made it. The flowers are stunning." Her eyes met mine, a flash of something before she turned away. I watched her glide off, whispering to Jacob, and that dread deepened. But the ceremony called, and I pushed it down, focusing on the vows, the rings, the kiss that sealed them as husband and wife. Applause filled the air, petals scattered underfoot, their fragrance rising like a prayer. It wasn't until later, during the quiet lull before the reception, that the first real clue surfaced. I slipped into the bridal suite to freshen up, needing a moment alone. There, on the vanity, Tara's phone buzzed, left unattended. I shouldn't have looked, but the screen lit up with a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Deals on for the shop. Developer ready to sign post, waiting. Keep her in the dark." My heart stuttered. "The shop, my shop." I froze, the words searing into me like hot iron. "What deal?" Jacob had mentioned investors once, casually, but I'd laughed it off. Now, piecing it with the shaved head, the noteet felt like a pattern emerging from the fog. I stepped back, breath shallow, as voices approached the door. Quickly, I turned away, pretending to adjust my scarf. Tara entered, laughing with her bridesmaids, and retrieved her phone without a glance. But I saw it then, in the mirror's reflection, her eyes on me, calculating, cold. The suspicion took root, quiet but insistent, like ivy creeping up the walls of an old Savannah home. I needed answers, but not here, not now. The reception awaited, with its toasts and dances, and I had to play my part. Little did I know, that clue was just the beginning of the unraveling. The reception unfolded in the grand ballroom. Crystal glasses clinking like distant bells. The air thick with the scent of roasted pecans and fresh orchids I'd arranged on each table. I moved through the crowd like a shadow, the scarf a constant reminder against my skin, itching faintly where stubble met silk. Guests complimented the decor, their voices warm, but I heard them through a haze, my mind replaying that text message. "Deals on for the shop." What deal? My shop wasn't for sale. It was my legacy, the place where I'd found solace after burying my husband, where every bloom told a story of resilience. Jacob knew that. Or did he? I spotted him across the room, laughing with his groomsman, Tara at his side, her hand possessive on his arm. She caught my eye and raised her glass in a mock toast, lips curving in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I nodded back, forcing politeness, but inside, questions churned like the Savannah River after a storm. Had I missed the signs? Over the past year, Jacob's visits home had grown shorter, his calls laced with excuses about work. Tara, always in the background, her voice chirping suggestions. Why not retire, Marianne? You've earned it. I'd laugh it off, saying the shop kept me young, but now those words echoed differently. Laced with intent, as the band struck up a slow waltz, Jacob approached, extending his hand. Dance with me, Mom. His touch was familiar, calluses from his desk job, softened by time. We swayed under the chandelier's glow, the wooden floor creaking softly beneath us. You seem quiet, he said, his brow furrowing, just like his father's used to. Is it the headache? I hesitated, the words bubbling up, but I swallowed them. Not here, not on his day. Just tired, sweetheart. Weddings take it out of you. He chuckled, spinning me gently, but his eyes darted to Tara, who watched from the sidelines, fingers tapping her flute. The song ended, and he kissed my cheek, whispering, "Love you, Mom. Thanks for everything." As he walked away, I felt a pang mixed with doubt. Was he part of this? My boy, who I'd raised to value roots over riches. The suspicion gnawed deeper during the toasts. Tara's father spoke first, praising her ambition, how she'd climbed the real estate ladder with grit. She's got an eye for opportunity, he boomed. And the room applauded. Opportunity. The word hung in the air like humidity. I excused myself to the powder room, needing air, but paused outside when I heard voices from a side alcove. Tara and Jacob. Hushed, but urgent. ... She suspects nothing, Tara was saying, her tone clipped. The developer called this morning. 2 million, easy. We close next week. Jacob's voice, hesitant, but Mom... She loves that place. Maybe we should tell her. A soft laugh from Tara. Tell her. After today. She's already letting Gadid, you see the scarf. Perfect touch. Fading beauty, remember. By the time she figures it out, it'll be done. Our future. Jake. The house in the suburbs. The life we deserve. I pressed against the wall, heart pounding, the cool plaster grounding me as the world tilted. Letting go. The shaved head was her, deliberate, a distraction or a cruelty to weaken me. And Jacob, my own son, complicit. The betrayal sliced deep, sharper than any razor. I slipped away before they emerged, weaving through guests to the garden patio. The night air was heavy with jasmine, the fountain's trickle mocking my turmoil. How long had they planned this? The shop sat on prime land, historic but undeveloped. Developers had sniffed around before, but I'd always said no. Now, it seemed, they aimed to force my hand. Back inside, dinner was served, shrimp and grits, the steam rising in savory curls. I picked at my plate, the flavors ash in my mouth, watching Tara charm the table. She leaned over, patting my hand. You okay, Marianne? You look a bit pale. Her concern felt scripted, eyes gleaming with that same hidden edge. I'm fine, I murmured, pulling away subtly. But I wasn't. The clues piled up, her sudden interest in my finances last month. Asking about deeds over coffee, the bitter undertone to her brew. Jacob avoiding my questions about their post-wedding plans. It all clicked. a puzzle I hadn't wanted to solve. As dessert, Aravedpiak cobbler, warm and sticky, I excused myself again, heading to my car under the pretense of fetching a shawl. In the quiet of the parking lot, gravel crunching under my heels, I dialed my lawyer, an old friend from church. "Elias, I need you to check something," I whispered, voice steady despite the quake inside. "Any filings on my property?" His response came quick, after a few taps on his keyboard. "Nothing official, but there's chatter. A developer's eyeing it for condos. Word is, your son might be involved, power of attorney or something." "You didn't sign anything?" "No, I hadn't. But Jacob had access to my papers, from helping with taxes." The realization settled like lead. They'd forged or manipulated, counting on my trust. I hung up, leaning against the car, the metal cool through my dress. Tears came then, silent and hot, tracing paths down my face. My son, selling me out for a quick fortune. Tara, the architect of it all, shaving my head as some twisted symbol of stripping me bare. The hurt was profound, a mother's grief amplified by deception. I wiped my eyes, drawing a deep breath scented with distant rain. I couldn't confront them now, not with the reception in full swing. But I wouldn't let this stand. Back inside, I pasted on a smile, toasting the couple with words that tasted like bile. "To new beginnings," I said, my voice carrying over the murmurs. Tara beamed, oblivious. But as the night wore on, a plan formed in the quiet corners of my mind cleaver, measured, drawing on the strength I'd honed over decades in the soil of my garden. The turning point came during my speech, the one they'd insisted I give as mother of the groom. I stood at the podium, spotlight warm on my face. The crowd hushed. My hands gripped the edges, steady. "Family is everything," I began, voice calm, intimate, like sharing a secret over tea. "It's trust, built petal by petal." I paused, meeting Jacob's eyes, then Tara's. Hers narrowed slightly. "But sometimes, trust is broken." Murmurs rippled. I pulled out my phone, connecting it to the speakers with a click that echoed. "Let me share a message that says it better." Tara's voice filled the room, clear and damning from the voicemail I'd recorded in the Alcavera. Words about the deal, the shaved head, the mockery. Gasps erupted, chairs scraping as guests turned. Jacob went pale, mouth agape. Tara stood, face flushing. That's notes taken out of context. But the damage was done. Whispers spread like wildfire through dry grass. Her father frowned, guests averted eyes. I continued, voice unwavering. "I've redirected the shop's profits largely through my will to fund a community garden for single mothers. A place of growth, not greed." The room fell silent, then a few claps, building to applause from those who knew me, who understood. Jacob approached later, eyes red. "Mom, we thought it was best. For you." I touched his arm, sorrow mixing with resolve. "Best for who, son? Go home. We'll talk later." Tara glared, but her power had shattered, exposed in the light. Jacob's words hung between us, heavy as the humidity outside, but I stepped back. The applause fading into awkward murmurs. Guests shifted in their seats, forks clinking nervously against plates, the band's soft jazz, a distant hum. Tara's face twisted, her veil now askew like a fallen crown. "This is ridiculous," she hissed, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "A misunderstanding." "Jacob, tell them." But he stood frozen, eyes on the floor, the weight of exposure pressing down. Her father approached, brow furrowed, whispering urgently in her ear. Friends and family exchanged glances. The joy of the day souring like overripe fruit. I returned to my seat. Heart pounding but steady, the scarf suddenly feeling like armor rather than a bandage. Whispers rippled outward. Did you hear? Selling her shop. Shaved her head. Carrying the truth through the room like pollen on the breeze. One aunt, my late husband's sister, leaned over, her hand warm on mine. Marianne, is this true? I nodded, voice low. Every word, she squeezed, her eyes fierce. Good for you, dear. About time someone stood up. Others followed. Quiet shows of support. A nod from a neighbor, a pat on the back from an old customer. But not all. Some of Tara's side-averted eyes, gathering coats early. The betrayal's chill seeping in. The night unraveled from there. The cake cutting was tense. Flashes from phones, capturing not joy, but strain Jacob's forced smile, Tara's tight grip on the knife. As pieces were served, the sticky sweetness cloying, I overheard Tara cornering Jacob near the bar. How could you let this happen? Fix it. Her voice cracked, the first real fracture in her facade. He murmured apologies, but his shoulders slumped. The boy I'd raised peeking through the man's regret. I didn't intervene. This was their consequence, blooming in public view, like weeds in a tended garden. By evening's end, the venue emptied faster than planned, goodbyes clipped and cool. Jacob approached again, as I gathered my things, the floral centerpieces wilting slightly under the lights. Mom, please. Let's talk. It wasn't supposed to be like this. His eyes, so like his father's, brimmed with unshed tears. Tara hovered behind, arms crossed, but her earlier fire dimmed. I touched his cheek, the stubble rough under my fingers. Not tonight, son. Go home, reflect. He nodded, defeated, and they left. The doors click, echoing in the near-empty hall. Word spread beyond the wedding, as it does in a town like Savannah, where historic walls hold secrets, but streets whisper them freely. By morning, my phone buzzed with messages, friends, customers, even the local paper sniffing for a story. Heard about the drama, one read, standing with you. The developer backed out by noon. Elias, confirming over coffee in my kitchen, the aroma of fresh brew grounding us. No deal without clear title, he said, sipping slowly. And after that exposure, reputation's everything here. Tara's real estate firm called her in for a chat. Whispers of ethics violations floating back to me through mutual acquaintances. Jacob took leave from work, holing up in their apartment, the silence between us stretching like the moss-stripped paths in Forsyth Park in the days that followed. The public fallout deepened Tara's isolation. Social media buzzed subtle posts from guests, hashtags like #FamilyBetrayal trending locally. Her clients hesitated, deals stalling as trust eroded. Jacob called daily, voice raw. I was wrong. Mom. She convinced me it was for your own good. Security. I listened, the phone cord twisting in my fingers. But forgiveness came slow, like spring after a harsh winter. Actions speak, Jacob. Show me. He started with small gestures, returning keys to the shop, helping replant my garden, the earth cool and forgiving under our hands as the dust settled. I turned inward, seeking healing in the quiet rhythms I'd neglected. The shop became my sanctuary anew, but lighter now, unburdened by hidden threats. Mornings found me among the stems, clipping roses with steady snips, their thorns a reminder of beauty's edges. But the shaved head lingered, a vulnerability that pushed me toward change. One afternoon, wandering the historic district, I stumbled into a cozy art studio tucked behind a courtyard fountain. Watercolors bloomed on easels, the smell of paper and pigment mingling with lavender from nearby pots. The teacher, Elias's sister, Amelia, widow like me, with kind eyes and paint-speckled hands, welcomed me in. "Try it," she said, handing me a brush, its bristles soft as petals. I hesitated, but dipped into cobalt blue, stroking it across the page. The color spread, evoking the hydrangeas from my garden, and something unlocked inside a release, like tears, long held. We met weekly after that, in the studio's warm light, sharing stories over tea. "Art heals what words can't," Amelia murmured one day, as I painted a magnolia, its white petals unfurling against green. She was right. Each stroke mended the fractures, turning betrayal's ache into creation's quiet joy. Jacob visited more, without Tara at first. We walked the parks, Spanish moss swaying overhead, talking of his childhood, my dreams for the shop. "I see now," he admitted one evening, bench creaking under us as fireflies danced. "It was greed, not care." Tara reached out eventually, a letter in her precise hand, apologies laced with excuses, but a start. I didn't respond immediately, letting time soften the edges. The community garden took shape, funded by redirected profit single mothers planting seeds with their children. Laughter echoing where concrete might have risen. I volunteered their hands in soil, watching growth mirror my own. Peace came gradually, like dawn over the river. My hair grew back, silver threads stronger, and with it, a newfound bond with Amelia. Our afternoons evolved into evenings, shared meals in her garden, her gentle touch on my arm sparking warmth I'd thought lost. "You've bloomed again, Marianne," she said one night, under string lights, our watercolors drying side by side. I smiled, feeling it true, not fading, but enduring. Months passed like the slow turn of seasons in Savannah, where the heat of summer gave way to the crisp whisper of fall leaves underfoot. My hair had grown to a soft pixie cut by then, silver strands catching the light like dew on spiderwebs. I no longer wore the scarf, embracing the change as a badge of survival, a quiet testament to the storm I'd weathered. The shop thrived in its new purpose, blooms spilling from vases in vibrant defiance, but my days there were fewer. Shared now with volunteers who'd heard the story and offered hands in solidarity. The real transformation, though, unfolded in the community gardenia plot of land I'd donated on the outskirts of the historic district, where on-vacant soil now burst with life. I spent mornings there, knees in the dirt, planting seedlings with women who'd faced their own betrayals, single mothers juggling jobs and dreams, their children giggling as they watered tiny sprouts. The air smelled of turned earth and hope, mingled with the faint brine from the nearby river. One woman, Lena, with calloused hands and a weary smile, shared her story over shared thermoses of sweet tea. "My ex left us high and dry," she said, pressing soil around a tomato plant. "But this grounds me." I nodded, feeling the echo in my bones. Betrayal cuts deep, but roots grow deeper. We'd work side by side, the sun warming our backs, tools clinking softly, conversations weaving through the rows like vines. It wasn't just gardening. It was rebuilding, petal by petal, trust in the world. Jacob joined sometimes. Tentative at first, his dress shirts rolled up, dirt smudging his cuffs. Our talks evolved from stilted apologies to honest reckonings. "I let her lead me astray," he admitted one afternoon, as we mulched a bed of herbs. the mint's sharp scent rising. Thought money would fix everything, our debts, the future. But it blinded me to what mattered. I paused, trowel in hand, meeting his gaze. We all stumble, son. The question is, do we get up? He nodded, eyes misty, and we worked in companionable silence, the garden's rhythm healing the rift. Tara came once, unannounced, standing at the edge like a ghost in designer heels, sinking into the mud. "Marianne," she said, voice small, "can we talk?" I straightened, wiping sweat from my brow, the sun casting long shadows. She looked diminished. The polished crackydrammers said her career had stalled, clients wary of the scandal. "I'm sorry," she continued, words tumbling out. It was fear of not having enough. But I went too far. Her eyes flicked to my hair, a flicker of remorse. I listened, heart softening but not yielding fully. Apologies are seeds, Tara. They need time to grow. She left with a nod. And though forgiveness lingered on the horizon, it wasn't rushed. Evenings brought me back to the art studio, where Amelia's presence became a steady light. The space was cozy, walls lined with canvases, the faint turpentine temps mixing with herbal teas she brewed. We'd paint in tandem, brushes dipping into palettes, colors blending like emotions. "Tell me about your husband," she asked one night, as I rendered a watercolor of the garden, greens bleeding into earth tones. I shared memories, the way he'd hum while arranging bouquets, his laugh like rolling thunder. He grounded me, I said, voice soft over the brush's whisper. Amelia set her work aside, her hand covering mine, warm and sure. And now, her eyes held mine, a gentle pull. Now, I'm finding new ground. Our bond deepened through shared silences and stories. Walks in the park where oaks arched like cathedrals, Spanish moss brushing our shoulders. One twilight, as fireflies sparked the dusk, she kissed my cheek, a tentative bloom. "You've brought color back to my world, Marianne." I felt it too, a late season flowering. Unexpected but welcome. Reflection came in quiet moments. Like sipping coffee on my porch at dawn, the city's hum awakening. I'd think of the wedding day. The notes sting, the voicemails echo, and marvel at the path from pain to peace. The shaved head, once a wound, now symbolized shedding what was false, what weighed me down. I'd journal sometimes, words flowing like watercolors, capturing lessons. Trust is fragile, but resilience is woven into our very fibers. Family isn't just blood. It's the choices we make to mend or break. And beauty, it doesn't fade. It transforms, rooted in the soul. The town moved on, as it does, but with subtle shifts. Customers at the shop shared knowing smiles, ordering extra stems for strength. The developer faded into obscurity, other projects calling. Jacob and Tara navigated their marriage's fractures, counseling sessions bridging what the exposure had cracked. He confided over lunch one day, at a cafe overlooking the squares, the clatter of plates underscoring his words. "We're working on it. She's changed her trying." I reached across, squeezing his hand. That's all any of us can do. As winter approached, frost tipping the leaves, I hosted a gathering at the Gardena harvest celebration. Lanterns strung like stars, tables laden with pies and cider. Lena's child ran through the paths, laughter pure as birdsong. Amelia stood beside me, arm linked in mine, her presence a quiet anchor. Jacob arrived with Tara, hesitant but present, bearing a basket of fruits from their yard. We shared toasts under the night sky, the chill air carrying scents of smoke and spice. "To new growth," I said, Glass raised, and they echoed it. Voices mingling, in tentative harmony. In those moments, I found closure on, perfect, but real. The betrayal had uprooted me, but in its wake, I'd planted deeper, bloomed brighter. Savannah's gardens whispered approval, eternal and enduring.